All right, I think we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Kristen Whitmore, and I am the VP of Customer Intelligence and Analytics here at Lotame. Welcome to our webinar, Analyzing Our Analytics, GA4, Data Collaboration, CDPs, and Alternatives. Before we get started, I just want to cover off on a few housekeeping items. First off, this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to share the recording, relevant content, and any outstanding questions with all attendees next week. In addition, because everyone is muted, if you have any questions, please send them over to us via the Q&A box at any point during the session. And if time allows, we'll take a few at the end. We have some incredible speakers lined up for today. Myles Younger, Head of Innovation and Insights at U of Digital, is our moderator for today and will be kicking us off. Myles, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us today. My name is Myles Younger. I am Head of Innovation and Insights at U of Digital. We are a training and education partner for the ad tech and MarTech industry, and I will be your moderator today. So once again, welcome to Analyzing Our Analytics, GA4, Data Collaboration, CDPs, and Alternatives. There are many different paths to analytics, to learning about customers, campaigns, creatives, channels, other things that start with C, so on and so forth. And what our panel today is going to be discussing is, essentially looking at the various alternatives that are out there. They are going to be discussing what's working, what's not, who they see winning the horse race between all these alternatives, and how the world of analytics is set to change. So, if all of our panelists could come on video, come off mute. We have a great panel today, and I'm going to go around the virtual table, as it were, and introduce everybody. Firstly, we have Jain, Senior Product Manager at GumGum. Meg is responsible for building the data platform and reporting strategy for GumGum, which is a contextual ad tech platform. And then we have Simon Poulton, Chief Data Officer at Ignite Visibility. Simon just recently joined Ignite Visibility, and he was recently VP Digital Intelligence at W Promote. And then we have Julius Rullamas, Associate Director, Platform Practice, Audience and Identity at Kinesso. Julius supports the platform practice across DMPs, CDPs, and other SaaS tech. And then finally, we have Alex Terrio, General Manager, Lotame Spherical. Lotame Spherical is Lotame's suite of CDP accelerator solutions. And previous to running the Spherical business, Alex was Lotame's Chief Customer Officer. So once again, thanks to our audience for being here. Thanks to our panelists for being here. Just a little extra housekeeping as we go. We are going to be running a couple of polls, and because we'd love to get the audience's thoughts on a couple of key topics. As Kristen said, throw your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm going to be doing my best to keep an eye on it, but I will actually call out our panelists. If you see a Q&A question that I'm missing, I don't see it, just holler and we will take a look at it. And then lastly, we're going to try and keep things to about 45 minutes or so. Okay. So let's kind of get into things here. Oh, sorry, I totally skipped our panelist slide. Here's everybody. I totally forgot we had a panelist slide. Okay, so let's take a look at the world of analytics at a high level. What we're looking at here on this slide is some research from the CMO Council. So what this chart is showing is the share of marketing analytics of marketing budgets over time. It's over about 10 years. So if you look down on the lower left, you can see it goes back to February 2012. So this is a decent amount of data here from the CMO Council. And you can see the share of spend on analytics staying, relatively steady over the last 10 years, maybe trending up slightly, but pretty steady. And then a recent CMO Council report found that marketers were predicting 63% growth in this budget over the next 3 years, which is a pretty big jump, as you can see in the chart. So what this kind of implies is that the analytics pie is growing. It's set to grow, which further begs the question, how will it grow? What is it that marketers are going to spend, perhaps this net new budget for marketing analytics? What are they going to spend it on? So I think we have a poll that we're gonna put live that we'd love to get the audience's thoughts on this of if the analytics pie is growing, which type of analytics solution do you think stands to gain the most from a rise in analytics budgets? So please vote. GA4, data collaboration, data clean rooms, CDPs, or something else. And take a couple of minutes to think about this and vote. And I think while we're waiting on votes to come in, Alex, would love to get kind of your early thoughts here on how you see this. If there's a horse race shaping up, who might be the winners and losers here?
Yeah, before I jump in, Myles, thank you again for taking the reins, I guess, pun intended with your horse race analogy, in moderating today. I'm really excited to see where the conversation goes. I have a few thoughts, so I'm going to give you two different answers. First, I want to touch on Google and GA4 because it is such a hot topic right now with the impending July 1st deadline. But my perspective is it's already a household brand. I don't think this is an opportunity for them to gain market share. If anything, I think this is a preserving market share because it's been 15 years since they've really invested in their analytics tool. That said, of course, there's new sexy tools that are going to be unlocked with GA4 for the likes of their common customer, whereas previously they kind of held that behind the 360 customer wall. So I think there's a lot of excitement. I look forward to see how the broader customer base is able to utilize it. It does require, it seems like it's going to require a little bit more subject matter expertise to make use of it. I'm hearing and reading a lot about tapping into things like integrating with BigQuery, which I know personally myself, I have no idea how to utilize. So I think making sure you have the right in-house data science to tap into that, and if not, investing in consultants. So I actually think consultants stand to make the most budget money out of the GA4 in the short term. As far as the horse race of the four, I'm putting money against data collaboration. It's early days. I think there's slow adoption. It might not be 2023. It might be more of 2024 where there's kind of broader adoption. But Luma's 2023 State of Digital did a really nice job unpacking this. Data collaboration stands to be the new method of securely joining first-party data with other external data sources for things like planning and enrichment and activation. And I have a strong stance that first-party data alone, despite the industry screaming that it's going to be the end-all be-all solution for us, isn't for most businesses. So tapping into something like data collaboration is going to be an important investment to answer questions like, what does my prospective customer look like? And where can I find them? There's a lot of dollars being left on the table with fear of third-party cookies going away that data collaboration is absolutely going to tap into. And I'll close with, I guess, while I wouldn't classify Lotame as a clean room by any means, we're looking at kind of use case capabilities like unlocking 20,000 discoverable data points to help make sense of first-party data. And I know the likes of AWS and Snowflake and others that are very much in the clean room data collaboration space. They're working hard to bring in these external data sources to help brands really with kind of off-the-shelf learning, planning, kind of insights and discovery. So that's going to help inform all of this prospective activation that we see as we navigate away from third-party cookies. So that's my bet.
Thank you. Okay, so it was interesting. So GA4, kind of household name already. So if analytics budgets rise, they're in a funny position because how much more could their market share really grow? But then there's lots of add-ons, let's say. There's a growing sort of array of add-ons, both in the services and tech buckets that you can integrate into GA4 And I did want to just call out for our audience, the Luma's most recent deck is very good. There is one slide in particular, I think very effectively kind of calls out what you were talking about, Alex, is sort of this polar reversal in the way that data is handled in marketing and advertising, and sort of why that might portend growth in the data collaboration space. Do we have Kristen? Do we have some poll results yet? How did everybody end up voting on this one? All right, so let's look at what the audience said before we go around our panel some more here. All right, so which types of analytics solution do you think stands to gain the most from a rise in analytics budgets, GA4, data collaboration, CDPs, or something else? So nobody voted for something else. Thank you. Everybody put a stake in the ground here. I really appreciate that, audience. Seriously. All right. GA4. All right. So this is kind of in agreement with what Alex was saying. GA4 is like clearly not the leader. Alex, you seem to have called the audience sentiment here. Data collaboration #1, and then CDPs a little bit behind GA4, but obviously still also well behind data collaboration. So, Julius, actually would love to get your thoughts on, if there's a growing analytics pie, where do you see the growth happening? Where are you seeing the growth happening at Kinesso? And then just reactions on the audience's sentiments on this.
Yeah, it's great that you brought that up, Alex, in terms of how GA4 is already a household brand. GA4 it's nothing new in terms of what it used to be as its predecessor, which was Universal Analytics. Majority of market share of businesses, small to medium, even large corporations, already had UA within their stack. So in terms of how it expands the market share, you're right. I honestly think it wouldn't expand budget or spend to GA4 because it's already part of their stack, right? So when it comes to adoption and when it comes to a industry that's moving towards a more fragmented way of doing things across different SaaS products, data clean rooms is one of those early adopters that a lot of, at least from my experience, a lot of companies are heavily investing in, just to be able to collaborate across different partnerships and as well as different, I guess you would say different products within their stack where they can share data and then hopefully unify the identity graph of a customer profile. And so where data clean rooms coming up in the next 3 years is going to be, I feel, a more heavily invested area for not just marketers and publishers, but also for the client side, where they're going to experiment. They're going to see how their first party data can be leveraged, right? But that's only one solution to a pile of questions of how marketers and clients are going to be able to leverage first party data in a cookieless world, right? The next play here is CDP adoption, where data centralization is going to be a huge thing to be able to merge not only first party data, which can range from media to offline to CRM, survey, transactional data, but also other types of data ships, like I just mentioned, being able to house that into an area and use that to enrich their audiences or unify their customer profile to have a better understanding of where their attribution is going. And so, CDPs, as we all know, isn't nothing new. We kind of see it as something that's going to be, at least from my experience, it's going to be in the future, whether you like it or not, until there is a solution in place where whether it's a walled garden ecosystem like Google or perhaps Amazon that create their own CDP, that's more easily or seamlessly available for clients to utilize, right? Or if it's going to be a solution like Telium or perhaps Adobe, their real-time CDP, or perhaps Treasure Data, where they can utilize something along the lines now and take advantage of whatever utility or functionality that's within the CDP to activate their first-party data and then see where it goes into the future. So I think both data clean rooms for data collaboration as well as CDPs are going to go hand in hand going into the next 3 years.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great call out. If and when the likes of, say, Google or Amazon were to release a CDP, that could potentially soak up a lot of this rise in budget.
Exactly.
Meg, I want to go to you next. We're talking a lot here about, what would, normally be considered user-based or user-level data. You're coming from GumGum. You're coming from more the contextual, probabilistic, cookieless world. Would love to get your thoughts on kind of, how are you kind of fitting into the analytics picture? Where are you seeing customers make investments? What do you think about the audience's reaction? Let's get your thoughts.
I think Alex, Julius, first of all, thanks, Myles, for moderating this entire thing. And I kind of do agree with Alex and Julius on the fact that GA4 already has a good enough pie share, and though they have released some things new, but given the amount of generative AI and all the interesting stuff that is going on, I am not sure if it really hits the mark, especially given that it's an update that's happened after 15 years. So while that would not be true, data collaboration as well as CDPs, I feel its data collaboration is more about looking for additional customers out there that we have probably not yet captured, which is something that every business, every single client is always focused on. But given the market conditions where everyone wants to make sure that the current customers are still happy and are still continuing and not afraid of the cookieless stuff or any of these new regulations coming in, CDP is something which would be the most important thing, where they would want to analyze their current customer behavior and predict what might be their churn probability or stuff like that. So in that sense, I think CDP is definitely something which will be gaining more and more of that pie. In terms of especially GumGum, at GumGum, we understand that all the contextual information about your page. And in fact, in all of this discussion, all of our digital analytics that happens, we've still not focused on going beyond talking about impressions, clicks, maybe the new things that we should actually be analyzing, the new areas, the new segments of digital analytics that we should be focusing on. For example, CTV. CTV has always lacked engagement-related insights, right? GumGum has recently launched a completely new product called InVideo, where we have contextual segmentation, and based on that, your ad gets served. Along with that, there is a dynamic QR, which is an engagement probability, an engagement insight that we provide additionally to the clients. So that kind of analytics, that kind of new segments that we are moving into, or like, for example, attention time, which is something apart from impressions and clicks, that is some new analytics that we've brought to the market. And there are a lot of other companies that are also bringing in attention to the sense that IAB task force has been created, where we are trying to align on what attention should be defined for the entire industry. So both attention, CTV, all of these things, I feel, are still aiming at being able to understand your current customer. And for us, the contextual environment in itself gives a lot of privacy. So maybe data clean room doesn't sit as well with the use case. And that's why it feels like maybe that's not something which would be as important for our industry segment. But the CDP, I definitely think, is a huge part of it.
Thanks for that. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of jump on top of that, because as we were prepping for this, I was thinking as well, as much as I think data collaboration will serve a role and absolutely gain some market share here, I think your point on CTV is such a good one, because if Myles, if you had a similar graph to show kind of the upward trajectory of CTV, I'm sure it'd be exponentially higher than just the budgets going to analytics. And the clean rooms, in my understanding of their models today, majority of them are keyed off of things like HEMS, which don't make sense to CTV. So it's like, great, how am I going to use a clean room from like a planning perspective and a measurement perspective? And so I'm excited to see kind of how they evolve into serving that, and what additional identifiers, like some of the, like Lotame's identifier, there's plenty of them out there that are tapping into some of the more probabilistic IP-based methodologies that conveniently speak the same language as CTV. We're all relying on IP for this. So I think there's even growth potential of the major players in kind of expanding their methodology beyond HEMS, because eventually there's going to be pressure like, cool, this is helping me with my web-based activation and measurement. What about my CTV activation and measurement?
Yeah.
I will say real quick.
Oh, please go ahead.
All right, I will say to that point, Alex, you make a great point, because there is actually stuff in the pipeline with a lot of the wall garden solutions, that like the clean rooms, at least for like ADH or AMC, where they are actually bringing their wall gardens down because of that, right? And it's interesting to see that, because we have not seen that in the past, and now they're starting to realize that since cookies are going away, being able to understand your customer in a very fragmented industry, Google may not be the only solution within their stack at this point, and going forward too, right? And we've seen this our side of things, and it's going to be interesting to see how this shapes out in the future, because there's still a lot of animosity, and there's still a lot of market share to be gained, and really adoption to take place or take hold. So
if I could just jump in here as well on this,
Please.
I think perhaps the original question here, it might be a little bit of a false dichotomy, in that fundamentally data collaboration requires the existence of data, while GA4 is that data collection mechanism, right? It's essentially a data warehouse. And I think what we're seeing now is this large scale transition within the industry toward data warehousing that is, to Alex's earlier point, going to mean you need some great degree of specification here. But we're also seeing the emergence of AI technology that I think is going to mitigate what kind of sort of step change that is for a lot of organizations, in that it is going to be easier to access this type of information. So I put that out there as the nature of data collaboration is fundamentally going to be the most important, but it will be nothing without these other mechanisms that are pushing data and that are allowing for, again, collaborative environments to exist on either side. So I think I wouldn't place a bet on any one in its own. I would say, look, you have to have a balanced strategy across all three of these areas, and really be thinking critically less about what is the technology and far more about what is the problem we're actually trying to solve for? Because when we're talking in these nebulous terms about what's a CDP going to do, well, it might be about some insight, but it also might just be about data portability in general, and the way that we're thinking about activating audiences on platforms. I think that is the way that the majority of folks are going to be exposed to clean rooms very early on, is going to be through these essentially audience portability functions, rather than the analysis and insights. But over time, that will come into play for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. And thank you, everybody. We're going to, I'm going to share my screen again here, and we are going to look at our next discussion topic. So I'll walk through kind of what we're looking at here. This is from a Gartner survey, one of their annual marketer surveys, and it shows a comparison between 2020 and 2022. And what they were surveying marketers on is the utilization of MarTech capabilities. So of the, say, entirety of stack capabilities that a marketing department or marketing team was paying for, how much were they actually using? And you can see from 2020 to 2022, it goes down fairly significantly, from 58%, which is already not great, all the way down to 42%. So, there's a couple different things you could potentially read into this. If I were to interpret it, I would say that everybody overbought during COVID, and they now have essentially too complex of a marketing stack or MarTech stack, and they just haven't figured out how to use all the bells and whistles that they're now paying for. Regardless of whether that is the right take on this or not, does this imply potentially future cost cutting? Does it imply, more urgent questions around build versus buy, which, to explain what's going on there, in the quote build scenario, you only build what you need. So your utilization rate hopefully gets up near 100% for the stuff that you build, because you're only going to build the features that you actually want. Whereas when you're buying tech, there's a much higher likelihood that you're not actually going to use the features. So we have another poll to run here. Would love the audience's thoughts on this topic before I throw it out to the panel. So here's your next poll. Please vote. Which type of analytics solution do you think might get cut first? Which one could be replaced more cheaply? So we're kind of upping the stakes here. Is it GA4, data collaboration, data clean room, CDPs, or something else? So in a world where MarTech utilization rates may be dropping, what do you think might get cut first? And while we're waiting for some poll results to roll in, Simon, I'm going to kick it back to you, sir, and would love to get a quick reaction here.
Yeah, sure. Out of the gate, I look at these numbers and I say that's not inherently a bad thing. What this tells me is that there are MarTech platforms out there that are enhancing their solutions. They're diversifying the types of solutions that they're bringing to the market. But you don't necessarily need to use all of them, right? If there's a tool that you're using and you've got some really great functions with it and they add more features, well, your utilization rate has gone down, but that doesn't inherently mean that you should be using them. And I think this is where we have to come back to the problem-centric mindset and really say, it doesn't matter how much of something you use. It's kind of like a cable TV package. Like my cable TV just added a bunch of channels that I have zero interest in watching. Technically, my utilization has gone down, but the time I'm spending watching TV has not changed. I'm still watching the same sports channels. I'm still watching the Dodgers. That to me says there's still use there, right? But I think this speaks to a broader trend, and that is the core fragmentation of marketing technology. And we've seen this time and time again as we see the cycles of MarTech go. When you think back to things like marketing automation and the sort of the golden era of inbound, this idea of consolidation, of bringing together landing page tools and a marketing CRM and all these features. Okay, that's great, but maybe I'm not using some of these, and maybe they aren't all best of breed as a result. So you do go out and you do find some of those solutions in more of a niche capacity. And I think that's where we see, again, the rise of solutions like the composable CDP. And so when we talk about CDPs, I think less about the, it's strange to say historic CDPs because it's such such a novel space still, but less about the legacy CDPs and more about the ones that are designed to be composable and designed to really work with an existing data infrastructure. Of course, this is for many larger brands. For many smaller brands, it makes sense to go with a sort of everything all in one box approach. But for many other organizations where that is a hard transition, the degree of being able to get these more niche solutions is exactly what they've been waiting for. And I think as a result, we will see CDP adoption go on the rise from there.
Interesting. All right. So more niche is not necessarily a bad thing. And I suppose, yes, there's definitely an argument to be made that things are just going to get more niche. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Simon.
It's a pendulum. We'll go back and forth.
Could we let's see if we have any poll results at this point. Okay. Oh wow, a slightly flatter spread here this time around. So again, the question, which type of analytics solution do you think will get cut first? Which one could be replaced more cheaply? Again, data clean rooms is the top one. That's interesting that it's the one that was going to get the most budget, but also the most vulnerable to cost cutting. I don't know if I was a data clean room company watching this webinar, I'd be thinking hard about that, what that means for your product roadmap. All right, but and then we have GA4 CDPs and something else kind of, fairly close, but CDPs are in second. And finally, some folks voted for something else. That obviously is a whole open question as to what we think that might represent. Meg, would love to get your thoughts here on what the audience is saying and just any other insights you have around build versus buy.
So I'm always pro build, but I know that that's a big gamble, especially because you need to be coming from a place where you have a lot of data expertise in-house, infrastructure expertise in-house for you to be able to build that niche. And so I don't think that is a strategy that it's like very rarely that can be followed. And with the if we talk about this entire technology utilization and what Simon was talking about, our denominator in this discussion of how this 42% has come, there's almost been 2.5x more tech stacks and technology tools that have been introduced compared to 2020 to 2022. So if we have so many more options, then even the cherry on the cake is that we have now so many self-service tools. As they increase these tools, increase features, increase complexity, then they also offer some of the other self-service tools. So you always have some of the other tool to fall back on without actually utilizing the entire stack of one individual one, which I think, given how fast we are moving and how we're trying to like catch the very next train, it does fit into that analogy. Coming back to everyone.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So coming back to what the audience is saying, data clean rooms are expensive. So they getting the boot of the leg does sound like that would be true. And since privacy and like regulations around privacy, the amount of research that's going on in privacy analytics is still quite fresh, but there is a lot of momentum over there. So not maybe in the next 2-3 years, but maybe 5 years, 6 years, we would soon be seeing like a lot of many more technologies come in, which would provide the privacy features that data clean room today provides to you. So when that happens, I think that time the adoption of data clean rooms or such data collaboration within privacy measures would become much more. And so maybe that's the reason why the audience also feels like, okay, it's too expensive for me to right now worry about the data clean.
There's room in the market for cheaper options, perhaps, in the data clean room space right now. Julius, what's your thoughts? What do clients at Kinesso thinking these days? Are clients at Kinesso sort of seeing similar sort of things play out inside their organizations?
It's interesting that poll had a lot more, I guess, individuals vote for something else. Because what we're seeing at Kinesso is actually there are things that we think that's going to be phased out in the next 2 years, perhaps. And we think that's going to be DMPs. The data management platform is, as we all know, used to be the legacy data warehouse for unifying data across first-party data, as well as bringing in as a data source third-party data, right? And the third-party data can be bought within the DMP, or it can be brought in from another third-party data source. And with the emergence of CDPs, a lot of these customers, or at least the client side, is seeing the difference of how to use a DMP and CDP in tangent now. But when it comes to out-of-the-box solutions, fundamentally, as we deprecate cookies into the future, a lot of the functionality that's within the DMP is already in an out-of-box option within CDPs, right? So at this point, from a client perspective, is why do we need both? And as something that we are seeing on the client side, that is at least from my understanding, something that would be cost cut immediately or very soon in terms of when deprecation starts. But outside of that, I also think with to Simon's point, the emergence of a lot of these solutions in a fragmented landscape, these SaaS solutions all have similar capabilities in which the customers from whoever, within that survey from 2020 to 2022, a lot of these marketers have an idea of how to target their audience or segment audiences across the board using a specific capability that they're used to seeing, right? As new solutions come out with deprecation, which just creates a more fragmented landscape, as mentioned, a lot of how to adopt and utilize these functionalities may be something that would be easier spent on just buying the solution or having a consultant do it for you, and then figuring it out from there, right? So in terms of market, MarTech capabilities utilization, being able to have something that has an out-of-box all-in-one solution is far more likely to be successful in the future, because at that point you'll be able to do everything you need to do within one thing. A CDP, like as mentioned, is kind of in a way an all-in-one solution for first-party data, right?
Yep.
But in terms of when it comes across like the emergence of AI coming about, being able to use that and leverage that, which we're seeing a lot of the bigger players putting that as a functionality within their product roadmap. Now you have an ability to have the artificial intelligence do the work for you as well and suggest things that you may have not even thought about. So it's going to be interesting to see how, with the emergence of AI and with the emergence of deprecation of third-party solutions, how they're going to work in tangent with not just marketers, but clients are going to be utilizing first-party data going forward. So.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. And so, all right. So with that, this is actually an excellent segue into our final discussion topic for the panel. So, in keeping with the trends right now, what we did is we just asked Bard, what should our final panel discussion question be? And so we asked Bard, what would you ask analytics professionals about AI? And so we got back a couple of questions. And I actually would like to focus on the third one here. What are the biggest opportunities you see for AI in analytics? And would love to get the panelists' thoughts. Alex, I'm gonna throw things over to you first. What do you think are opportunities in AI? Where's Lotame looking like it's going to fit into this picture? What do you see coming down the road?
Yeah, thanks, Myles. I do want to hit on just in response to Julius, because I think your points are really good about the kind of consolidation, definitely about the need, the drive towards profitability in 2023. And so trying to find kind of systems, and CDPs absolutely play a huge role with first party data. But I'd be remiss to not mention, like, there are definitely boundaries to what they can do, especially when you start tapping into kind of converging of data that is not tied to a deterministic identifier and sourced in a privacy compliant way. There's a lot of, while there's a lot of demand for CDPs to kind of build into the DMP category of offering third-party data, they're really struggling to do it in a way that's privacy compliant, that can do enrichment. And so I think we're going to continue to see a little bit of fragmentation. And so as these businesses strive towards profitability, they're struggling a little bit to figure out what are the different businesses I invest in, and where do I try to find the ones that are like one size fits all across the different tool sets. And so I wanted to jump in. Thank you for letting me respond there. As far as AI, I think there's so much noise in the robust data we have access to today. I think we all, for over the past 10 years, have just wanted more data and more data sources and the ability to kind of filter deeper and faster. And I think where there's the biggest opportunity is using AI to better classify the different data, maybe better quantify quality of what the data source is, and kind of bubble things up to the top, and then spit out something that's meaningful versus the noise of, like, I'm getting strong signals that my prospective customer is buying luxury handbags and also luxury cars, but they have a lower household income. So it's conflicting, and I'm trying to figure out what that means. Making sense of the almost like the different layers to the data versus looking at it at a very flat level is a huge opportunity for AI to help guide us.
Yeah, definitely in first party data world, absolutely. When you're talking about customer data, quality is a big deal. Simon, what do you think about AI? What do you think about what Alex said?
I think Alex is right on the money there, just in terms of how we're thinking about. I think about it through the lens more of democratization of accessibility and things like, so data cleaning, for example, in that scenario. The application of taxonomy, those are things that are somewhat challenging at this moment in time, given the technical skill set that is often required to handle those types of tasks. So the more that those are just simplified, right? The AI as an assistant rather than as a job replacement function, I think, is a really critical component of this. But more than that, I think that AI, the opportunity that's presented here is one where analysts and analyst professionals will ultimately take a bigger seat at the table, because there are a lot of other aspects of organizations that are being impacted by this. I think yesterday we saw those updates from Google Marketing Live about literally, we're going to write your ads for you, and we're going to do everything for you. And you start looking at that going, well, what's the paid search manager going to do then? Are they, are they going to become an analyst? And that's exactly where I think we as data professionals come to say, well, I need a bigger seat at the table. I need to have greater influence over these other areas of the business, because it ultimately all comes down to data cleanliness, data accessibility, and the intelligence that you're able to derive from those signals. So some of this is feeding data to machines. How accurately and rapidly can you be doing that? But also, how can we be thinking more critically about what intelligence needs to be provided to the media managers now that they no longer have some of these functions under their purview, and then ultimately executives to know, how can we keep investing in this? So I think there are a lot of opportunities here, again, breaking down those walls and ultimately democratizing the accessibility of more, I guess, next level data functions.
Thanks, Simon. I want to unpack a couple things that you said into two follow-on questions. First, Meg, and then we'll close things out with Julius. So Meg, Simon mentioned kind of taxonomies. Obviously, in the world of contextual advertising, the sort of very simplest way to do it is just to categorize all content according to some rigid taxonomy that only has, like, I don't know, say 1,000 options at most. I would imagine GumGum is living in a sort of more a world of shades of gray. And I just kind of want to get an understanding of, like, how do you see AI affecting the application of taxonomies in digital marketing and advertising and analytics?
That's a great question, Myles. So two things. First, I think that's what AI coming into the picture is pushing anyone in this contextual environment to go beyond just the IAB categories that have been defined and look for something which is more meaningful, which is not maybe an insight, but an out of sight, something that is not so visible to the naked eye. So in that sense, I think one of our very recent initiatives, which I'm super excited about, is something that we call social context, where it's not just about these IAB categories, but it's also about thinking about these other areas, like is this publisher's page something that we can classify as pro LGBTQIA, which are not something that IAB or even Google and all these existing categorization already does. And unfortunately, it's marketers would worry about it, but then they would worry a little bit more about the dollars that they're spending and if it is going in the right direction. And such categorization being added with the help of AI that's getting developed within house is something that we would be able to convince the marketers to tell them that directly and indirectly, your dollar is getting spent on right measures. It's going for good causes. It's something which is more socially relevant, especially right now, given social relevances. Of course, it is ethically an important topic, and it is something which is quite trending, hot or not, like you used to say. So I am quite excited that our AI has gone beyond the point where it's not just those taxonomies which have been defined. We do experiment. We are looking for ways that we can add value to that. And to add to all of this conversation and Simon's point, I think one interesting application of AI in general in digital analytics, with all the tech stack that's increasing, all of the conversation we've had, I think one area of research, which is explainable AI, is something which is going to be huge, because marketers have been doing this for quite some time. Just because new technologies are coming in and they're adapting it, they would want to get more insights into and transparency into how exactly the AI model has predicted something and what additional information can I get. Because I don't think they would be that ready to take a backseat, and it would again fit so much more into the self-service realm. So explainable AI is also something that I think is something which is not going anywhere.
Yeah. So the AI made a decision. Why?
Yeah.
Why did it make that decision?
Exactly.
Meg, thank you. The very interesting remarks on kind of using AI to kind of navigate questions around, I don't know, brand purpose, brand suitability, which kind of unpacks just into branding. Where do we want to be and how do we want to show up? So that's super interesting. So Julius,
Really quick, can I just say I
you,
love the expression that Meg had there of insights versus out of sights. I think I'm going to start using that. I think that's a really good one.
all right, we
Thank
coined it. We coined a new phrase on this webinar. Yes. All right,
Oh,
Julius.
I'm so sorry, but just before we move on, since I spoke about social context,
Yeah.
so just to introduce, that's an entire, that's a small that's a really nice research going on by someone called Chris Vargo, who is a professor. So not claiming that we build social context.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Listen, Meg, if you're able to, I don't know, type it into the chat for everybody who's on the webinar. They might be curious to get this researcher's name, maybe a link to everything. Julius, so I want to go back to something Simon said, with respect to Google Marketing Live yesterday and how Google is just, you put $1 in and it just runs everything. It does the creatives, it places all the media, decides the channel mix, decides your attribution model, it decides everything. All right, what does the search marketing manager do? And that immediately made me think about Kinesso, agencies, teams and companies that exist to run these campaigns. How do you see, or how is Kinesso currently planning for adapting to a future where you just have an AI essentially has a major seat at the table?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's probably $1 billion question going forward, right?
At least.
Yeah, but from fundamentally at its core, AI is nothing new. With the emergence of decision modeling, lookalike audiences, predictive modeling, etc. It's just getting better and better though. Like there's a lot of noise of what Alex is saying of how AI now with the new breakthrough of LLMs and how it's trending towards AGI. How I see AI going into the future, especially with new technology that's coming out to help marketers, we had to think of AI more of a collaborator and someone who is going to help us critically think of how to move forward. I think, as to Simon's point, it's not going to be more so of them replacing the job of an analyst or an associate that does search marketing or targeting ads or programmatic, etc. I think it's going to be with the emergence of AI that's trending towards a better use case for it. It's going to be something that we can tap into to help drive the clients to more successful objectives within their audience strategy or within their data architecture or framework that they're looking to get into that we may not even know, right? I think AI as a resource is going to be something that we can tap into for something that helps us think outside of the box and help us target or define audiences a little bit more refined and help actually enrich and figure out what the client really wants to make it more impactful and meaningful, right? So with that note, AI, I feel like, is still something that is a lot of clients are afraid to change and move towards now, just because it's not fully fleshed out of how AI is going to affect our industry, which is why there's a lot of people that's scared out there of how it's going to replace jobs. And there's a lot of, in the media with that narrative that's being pushed. But, in the future, I really think that it's going to be better for everyone as AI, if we think of AI as like a collaborator or a critical thinker, that is someone we can tap into as another person on our team. So it'll be interesting. So
well, yeah, thanks, Julius. And I love to paraphrase what you said, I love the thought of AI as kind of a source of non-obvious insights, where that used to be sort of locked inside a relatively small sort of group of people. Maybe not every company had the people who could generate those. And now that kind of capability has been unlocked. At the risk of cutting off a discussion that could probably go on for another hour or two, we're at the 51-minute mark here. I'm looking at the time, so I did want to wrap things up. I don't know. Alex, you came off mute. Did you have a
Oh,
last word you wanted to
I
get
had
into?
more of an anecdote. Yeah, I think I just to kind of go off of Julius's great point. I think it is going to be about unlocking new jobs amongst people who understand AI. And you could go back and think about like the typewriters and people who learned to type, they then got new jobs. It didn't replace people who were, handwriting stuff like, and I have an 8-year-old who I was teaching. He was asking how fast, he's like, how do you type so fast? I was like, well, a lot of work, a lot of practice, blah, blah, blah. And I'm showing him how to type. And I was like, why am I showing you how to type? You won't type. Like, you should be learning how to use AI. And I pulled up ChatGPT and I'm like, ask it some questions, learn how it works, because by the time you go into the workforce, you're going to need to know how to use this as a tool the same way I know how to use a keyboard as a tool today.
He's not going to need to type at that point.
No, he won't need to at all. He's going to just know how to master the use of AI. So I think you hit the nail on the head.
What do we even teach our children anymore? Like, are they going to need to know how to drive, type? Who knows?
I mean, critical thinking, right? I
Yeah.
feel like that's what it always comes back to, is critical thinking.
Exactly.
And for what it's worth, right now, I've been using ChatGPT to read my son bedtime stories. And it is incredible in terms of the creativity that is sparking in me. So that's really where it's consistent. But my son's 3. His first exposure to AI is through bedtime stories. That's amazing.
All right. Well, with that, we will conclude today's discussion. Once again, would love to thank all of our panelists. Thanks a lot for being here, sharing your expertise, sharing your thoughts, being part of the discussion. Thanks a lot to our audience for making the time today. Thank you very much for your votes in those polls. That was super interesting to get some insight into what you're thinking about what's going on out in the market.